Appreciate our audience. General Fleischmann, we have an audience that is assembling right now. It's the first time they've really seen each other in 19 months, I think. So there's a lot of convening going on outside. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for really offering a rather unique perspective. I think it's a great opportunity for us to get together and discuss an important element to the Army. JADC2, you've all heard about. The Army added a C in front of that word. It's really coalition, joint, all-domain command and control. So that coalition component is very important to the war-fighting business we're in. And I can tell you from my own personal years of experience in Germany and with the German military that you get a great amount of professional counseling, if not wonderfully penetrating questions from an ally as important and as skilled as the German military. So it's great to see that we have a chance to talk about a German approach to operationalizing the information advantage from an important allied perspective. And we have an opportunity to hear from a key leader in the German force who can provide us, I think, some great insights. General Fleischmann is the Director of Plans and Policy Directorate, Cyber Information Domain Service Headquarters, and Commander of Bundeswehr Center for Digitization and Capability Management. That probably is a remarkable thing to say in German, but I can barely say it in English. That's a great title, but it's also a great operation. And I know you've been involved in a reorder and restructuring of that particular organization, although you've been doing this for 3 years, and that's a long time watching change. So I'm pretty certain that you'll have some great insights. General Fleischmann is the president, by the way, of Cidccc chapter in Bonn, and for that, he gets another accolade, certainly from this speaker. Thank you for doing that. We've got some interesting things coming up in a show that we're doing there soon. And we're glad to have you with us to discuss your cyber perspectives, really, of your military and allied approach. This information domain consolidates that he's directing all German military cyber, IT, military intelligence, geoinformation, and operative communication units. That's convergence, ladies and gentlemen. That is a definite convergence, and it is, as I've heard in the last presentations, this is commander's business. So we have an opportunity to hear from the commander. We have an opportunity as well to ask some questions, as usual. Ask me at tna.com, and we'll collect those questions and have a chance to present them to General Fleischmann shortly. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our speaker, General Fleischmann, to our virtual stage. Thank you.
So, General, thank you very much for the very nice introduction. As you said, I'm also the president of the FCR chapter in Bonn. It's the greatest FCR chapter in Europe. Thank you so far, and I think you have done the same in US. It's my honor to address such a distinguished audience during today's conference. Thank you for that opportunity. And I would like to outline to you 3 very different approaches on how the German armed forces tackle the challenges that originate from the trend of digitalization and increasing availability of information. Next slide, please. As you probably well aware, Germans tend to begin a briefing with the definition. So before jumping into 3 approaches, I would like to start with the German perspective on the cyber information domain as we understand and define it. The first approach I would like to present is a new concept on supporting missions, especially for the command of the ground, through a cyber information domain team, a team of subject matter experts. The second approach is to operationalizing the advantages of the information age, which I would like to speak about, is the Cyber Information Domain Coordination Center, a European Union project under the umbrella of the Permanent Structured Cooperation PESCO in the EU. And the third approach, and finally topic for today, quickly describes the new established Bundeswehr Center for Digitalization just in August. And its goal is to unify all armed forces concept and capability development efforts in the cyber information domain. Next slide, please. As you are all very well aware, the increasing digitalization has been a key theme throughout the last decades. Armed forces across the world are in the process of adopting or already have adopted, like you, the strand in their warfighting doctrine and their capabilities. This development is linked to new challenges and opportunities. At the same time, the boundaries between cyber operations, information operations, and electronic warfare became increasingly difficult to differentiate. Hybrid warfare emerged as a new term, reflecting the interaction of the cyber and information environment alongside traditional methods of warfare. In order to actively participate in and profit from this modernization of the battlefield and to counter the newly emerging threats, Germany decided in 2016 to establish a new service of the armed forces, combining the cyber information domain CID. It's an independent domain of operation in addition to the classic domains of land, air, sea, and more recently, space. In our understanding, this virtual, physical, and cognitive space comprises cyberspace, the electromagnetic environment, and the cognitive layer of the information environment, and thus goes beyond the definition of cyberspace given by many of our allies or NATO. Cyberspace is the virtual space of all information technology systems networked or networkable at the data level worldwide. The electromagnetic environment is defined as the totality of electromagnetic manifestations. The cognitive domain of the information environment is a portion of the cyber information domain in which human behavior constitutes by dissemination, reception, and processing of information. All three aspects are deeply interlinked. Cyberspace will use the electromagnetic spectrum, think Wi-Fi or cell phones. Effects in cyberspace and the electromagnetic spectrum will influence the cognitive layer, while changes in the cognitive layer have an impact on the cyberspace. Think social networks and their viral reactions, again influencing the cognitive domain of others. Therefore, the cyber information domain is, in the German understanding, used in a way that holistically addresses the full spectrum of cyber information domain by integrating cyberspace, the electromagnetic spectrum, and the cognitive layer. Germany would like to overcome stovepipes by merging all information-related aspects and generating benefits by conducting cross-functional and holistic analysis. Next slide, please. The Cyber Information Domain Service conducts CID operations, but also provides CID services such as intelligence, just mentioned before, protection, and provision of secured IT services. CID operations are operations in the cyber information domain which can be conducted independently from or alongside to operations of the other components of the joint force. CID operations can support other components or they can be supported by other components. CID operations are national operations under the principle of operations of combined arms and such as part of joint all-domain operations. CID operations are applied on the operational level and tactical led by National CID Component Command. At the same time, the Cyber Information Domain Service provides force enablers to the joint force, for example, provision of secured IT services, military intelligence, and geospatial intelligence. We continue to be a force provider with all CID capabilities and thus provide the other domains with deeply integrated forces, CID capabilities and reachback services by our systems, intelligence, and capabilities to create effects in the cyber information domain. Next slide, please. Now that the definitions are out of the way, allow me to present the first approach, the Cyber Information Domain Team, CIDT. This is actually a brand new concept for us, which is just being implemented. The aim behind this concept is the attempt to create a single point of contact for a tactical commander on the ground or at sea within his staff for all elements and operational contribution by the Cyber Information Domain Service. Such a group of subject matter experts will be able to advise the commander, both during the planning and execution phase on how to integrate CID services and operations into decision-making process, thus achieving a synchronization of effects beginning at the lower tactical level. The Cyber Information Domain team combines expertise in order to coordinate reachback and allow the optimal use of CID capabilities. A Cyber Information Domain team will always be tailored to the mission, including only necessary elements. Next slide, please. The aforementioned definitions, considerations, and structural adjustments within the German Bundeswehr and the German Cyber Information Domain Service also lead to the conclusion that Germany offered to transition these advantages into the framework of European Union Permanent Structure Cooperation PESCO program. The German efforts in this regard led to the Cyber Information Domain Coordination Center project. In 2019, the project had been included in the third iteration of the PESCO program, more specifically in the category Cyber Defense C4 ISR. During the matchmaking day in June 2019, the European Defense Agency, the German proposal was presented to the PESCO member states. Supported by Hungary, the Cidccc project proposal had been accepted by the PESCO Secretariat and finally in November 2019 endorsed by the Foreign Affairs Council. Currently, the contributing member states are France, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Hungary, and the Federal Republic of Germany. The objective of the Cidccc is to improve the exchange of information related to the cyber information domain. In addition to the necessary synchronization of activities in the cyber information domain, the Cidccc is envisioned to support military planning activities as well as command and control functions of the EU cyber and information domain related operations and missions. The timeline is ambitious. You see at the bottom. The overall aim is to realize a standing multinational military element in 2026 plus, but already starts relocating the Cidccc to Brussels in 2023. In addition, a goal is to have initial operational products such as situational reports, threat assessments, and coordination mechanism ready in 2023. In striving for that aim, the Cidccc does not aim to duplicate NATO activities or efforts. This is achieved firstly by dedicating to EU-led military operations and missions and related area of interests. Secondly, NATO currently holds no holistic cyber information domain approach like represented by Cidccc. Next slide, please. Another German approach to operationalize information is the Bundeswehr Center for Digitalization. This center is structurally part of the Cyber Information Domain Service and serving as the single hub and driver for the armed forces digitalization. It is responsible for the conceptual development and capability development of the Bundeswehr within the framework of the dimensional responsibility for the cyber information domain, as well as the capability development of the Cyber Information Domain Service. The Bundeswehr Center for Digitalization develops the capabilities of the Cyber Information Domain Service for operational activities in the cyber information domain and acts as a provider for central strategic capabilities for the Bundeswehr. We have derived the center and its structures from a purely task-oriented approach. The process-oriented organizational structure are centered on the core task, optimizing the workflow in order to generate benefits for the Bundeswehr. This alignment meant the deployment of interactive and agile structural elements within flat hierarchies, particularly in view of the numerous player in the relevant processes. A new level of flexibility was required, for example, by creating digitalization platforms and a software cluster logic allowing intelligent reuse and integration of existing software and IT services for new and complex projects. The goal of the Bundeswehr Center for Digitalization is to minimize development times, also by standardization, while optimizing the use of resources in order to generating a high degree of readiness for the Bundeswehr. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to come to a close. The permanent presence of hybrid threats and the increasing audacity in cybertext demonstrated that the purpose of the aforementioned facts, development, and structural elements are not limited to crisis operations or conflicts, but have significance in peacetime as well. No matter whether pondering over crisis operations abroad, low-scale hybrid conflicts at home, or potential large-scale kinetic conflicts, clashes and confrontation in the cyber information domain are likely to precede and accompany conflicts throughout the full spectrum of conflicts. Consequently, the scope of the German approach to operationalize information advantage is not limited to cyberspace. It is not limited to cyber defense and intelligence challenges, nor will it merely collect and provide information about cyber-related incidents. The scope is designed to be much broader and to include information-related functions and capabilities. I am convinced that by exchanging information among partners on their respective perspective and experiences in building up structures and capabilities, we can contribute to our common understanding of the challenges in the cyber and information domain and thus strengthen cybersecurity and operational resilience for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, General, thank you so much for your attention. I'm looking forward to your comments, insights, and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We do have some questions from the audience. The first question, from a German perspective and in light of your comments on Cidccc, do you believe that the European Common Security and Defense Policy is well suited to respond to the increasingly observed hybrid activities, including malicious activities in and through the cyber and information domain?
Okay. Thank you very much for that very tough question. But allow me to differentiate between hybrid activities below the threshold of use of force and above that threshold. This differentiation is relevant as we have seen in recent conflicts that hybrid activities may be employed before the breakout of hostilities, but also continue during military activities to support conventional warfare. When you focus on hybrid activities below this threshold of armed conflicts, most of the activities may be malicious, especially when looked at in the sum of all events. But mostly counter-reaction to this type of hybrid activities do not fall within the realm of military response. Mostly the require of a whole of governmental approach with law enforcement, legal institutions and communications agencies in the lead. The EU, as you questioned, is perfectly suited to combine all this mechanism, included military advice, if necessary, as a unified, synchronized response and assisting its member states in coordinating measures against that hybrid threat. Hybrid activities above the threshold of armed conflict supporting military activities still require a whole of governmental approach. However, military responses potential can be considered as a part of the response. Again, the EU, with the EU Military Committee and the EU military staff, is well suited to synchronize military planning to include other activities in order to counter the hybrid dimension of that conflict. Furthermore, I think The Cidccc project can support the EU situational awareness and planning both below and above the threshold.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Next question. Can you explain how the planning and command and control in the cyber and information domain differs from other domains?
Okay. The cyber information domain is mostly a man-made domain other than land, sea, air, or space. While cyberspace is virtual, it still has a physical layer that is located within countries, but the logical layer undergoes continuous change and adaptation. Both the cyber information domain have potential global reach while being increasingly able to provide a very fine-tuned discrimination of different individuals. We are all familiar with receiving advertisements tailored to our own interests. The same mechanism applies to potential malicious use of this domain. Time and space have completely different weight. Actions can be conducted simultaneously at many different places at once. At the same time, it's rarely possible to stockpile cyber information domain effects like you would store ammunition or build tanks in preparation for a potential conflict. In order to be effective, the tools of the cyber information domain have to be tailored precisely to the purpose, which is very time intensive. Once designed and implemented, you have to continuously ensure that your tool is still effective, because a single software patch on the target system may render the effect useless. In a sense, acting in the cyber information domain includes a number of particularities which are not present in other conventional military domains. And finally, the battle for the narrative increasingly dominates any armed conflicts and actually decides the strategic success. Tactical, and this is very important, you may win battles, but the decision of a victory is settled on social media. This is where I believe that, for example, the Cidccc project, as you mentioned before, or questioned before, can really assist in providing subject matter expertise for planning and timely information for command and control in order to protect EU member states' military service members and help EU missions and operations to become even more effective.
Thank you, sir. We have time for about 2 more questions. One more. So can you please elaborate a bit on your views on the dependencies of time and space in the cyber and information domain?
Okay, thank you. One of the particularities of the cyber information domain is the different meaning of time and space. Effects in this domain can potentially spill over to other areas, resulting in physical and psychological effects, as shown in recent military or political conflicts. In addition to that, it seems that in today's world, the narrative for the digital world, I just mentioned before, become seemingly more important than the physical outcome on the ground or at sea. Thus, this domain cannot be considered in isolation, but must be taken into account holistically in the entire military planning process. The scope of all what we do in the cyber information domain will definitely not be limited to cyberspace. All of what we do in the cyber information domain must not only cover cyber defense and intelligence issues, and must not have just the task to collect and provide information about cyber-related incidents. The scope of the cyber information domain must be much broader and include information-related functions and capabilities.
Thank you, sir. Next question from the audience. Is there a concept like zero trust in the Bundeswehr that is guiding your development of cybersecurity and coalition operations?
Thank you. This is a very, very tough question. At the moment, we have no zero trust concept, but we are working on several concepts in the case of determining different risks. And in this case, we are still working on concepts for how to secure IT services, how to secure, for example, critical infrastructure and other things. But at the moment, I'm be honest, we have no concept no zero trust concept, but we are working on several things like this in this direction.
Thank you very much, sir. That was our final question for General Fleischmann. Please welcome Bob Wood back to the stage to thank him on behalf of AFCEA and our audience.
Thank you. Give him a hand. General Fleischmann, thank you very much. Thank you to your team as well to help coordinate this session, make sure it communicated well, and I would expect as such with your organization and this team. You've given us some interesting perspectives. I always am fascinated by when the mention is made of planning processes. There's NATO planning processes. As an old NATO soldier, I've been involved in a lot, and EU, as you mentioned, planning processes now. But I would imagine that the Cidccc helps in integrating those processes, and obviously your leadership is important there. We are going to now thank one more time General Fleischmann, please. And I would point out that on your behalf, AFCEA will be making a donation to the Fisher House, which provides very important services to families in our military. And in fact, we'd like to now offer an opportunity for our audience to share not just your presentation, but now take those ideas as well down to the floor and out to the various other activities ongoing and see how to fit all this information together. Great, rich morning of content and a very important part of the coalition voice we heard here now. We've extended lunch, as I mentioned. We're going to go now for lunch, and that's served. We've got the service lines down in the Reynolds lobby. That's where the James Brown showcase is down there, but we can seat you outside, and looks like the weather's holding off, so I'm glad to see that. It's going to be running for a while. That you'll go through the exhibit hall, and likely that'll attract your interest for sure. Please refer to the screens on either side of the stage, some of the upcoming events that we've got. We talked about the Sergeant Majors panel, their perspectives on supporting decision dominance. We as well have a great moderator. We know Sergeant Major Clark, Dr. Clark, for his help in this moderation of this event. As well, we're going to have the Chief of Staff of the 1st Special Forces Command looking at information advantage across the conflict continuum, and that'll be done by Colonel Josh Retz. And I'm looking forward to meeting him. We only spoken on the phone, but I'll tell you, it's going to be a very important session, and that'll be a keynote session. So we're looking forward to that at 3:15. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'd like to once again thank General Fleischmann, to you as well, and let's move out and take a look at all that's offered by our industry partners. Thank you.
The good thing about that swoop is nobody noticed. You're the only person in the whole room that noticed.
We had some questions, but
You probably have it.